This recording was co-produced with groups of parents and carers in Suffolk who shared what they wanted to find out about Education, Health and Care, or EHC, needs assessments. It has been adapted for families in Luton and is divided into sections which match the main questions which parents and carers wanted answered. It is a long recording, so you may find it easier to watch this in several goes, and we've numbered the slides and created a contents to make it easier for you to find particular sections. This recording will explore the purpose and threshold of an EHC needs assessment and when it might be requested from slide 9. We'll look at who can request an EHC needs assessment and how a request can be made from slide 19. We'll explain why a local authority might refuse to do an EHC needs assessment and what options families have if they receive a refusal from slide 37. We'll go through what happens if an EHC needs assessment is agreed and how you and your child are involved from slide 44. And we'll finish with explaining what happens at the end of the EHC needs assessment process from slide 64. This recording will refer frequently to the Special Educational Needs and Disability Code of Practice of 2015. You can download this statutory guidance for free if you would like to. Chapter 9 is all about EHC needs assessments, EHC plans and annual reviews. We'll start by looking at some key points of law which underpin the Education, Health and Care process. The Children and Families Act of 2014 puts a duty on education, health and social care to work together to support children and young people with special educational needs or disabilities, or SEND. So local authorities must have arrangements in place to plan and commission education, health and social care services jointly for children and young people with SEN or disabilities. And they must promote the integration of education and training with health and social care. If agreed, an EHC needs assessment now involves a duty for the local authority to seek information and advice from health and social care, as well as education, to unpick what all the factors might be which are making it difficult for a child or young person to learn. Section 19 of the Children and Families Act states that local authorities must have regard to the views, wishes and feelings of the child, young person or adult, and their parents or those with parental responsibility. And they must have regard to the importance of them participating as fully as possible in decisions around the child or young person, and the importance of them having the information and support they need in order to participate, and to support them so that the pupil can achieve the best possible educational and other outcomes. An outcome is what everyone wants your child to be able to do with agreed support in a set period of time. Most children and young people with special educational needs will have those needs met in learning settings through SEN support. This involves a 4-stage cycle where parents and pupils work with the learning setting to explore, agree and review the plan for SEN support together. If you would like to understand more about this graduated cycle of SEN support, there is more information on our SENDIAS website in Luton and also on Luton's local offer and Luton's SEND local offer. Learning settings in Luton can also access additional advice and help from a variety of specialist services which support learning settings to support pupils with different types of special educational need. And you can find out more about these services on Luton's local offer. There will be some children and young people who will need more help, which goes beyond the resources available to learning settings to provide SEN support. So what is the purpose of an EHC needs assessment? An EHC needs assessment helps identify the education, health and social care needs which are making it difficult for a child or a young person to learn. This information gathering process will also make clear the support required to meet these needs and to help the child or young person reach their goals and aspirations. It is the first step in the process of getting an Education, Health and Care, or EHC, plan. The law says that a local authority, or LA, must secure or do an EHC needs assessment if it considers that the child or young person has or may have special educational needs, and it may be necessary for special education provision to be made in accordance with an EHC plan. In other words, if there is a possibility that a child has special educational needs which may need support which goes beyond the resources available to learning settings to provide said support. So when the local authority receives a request for an EHC needs assessment, how will they know if your child has or may have SEN, which may need support which goes beyond the resources available to the setting for SEN support? The SEND Code of Practice states that when a local authority receives a request for an EHC needs assessment, they should consider whether there is evidence that the child or young person has not made expected progress despite the learning setting taking relevant and purposeful action to identify, assess and meet their special educational needs. The SEND Code recommends that the local authority pay attention to evidence and information of your child or young person's progress and attainment, the nature and extent of their special educational needs, the action already being taken by the learning setting, any evidence that where progress has been made, it has been as a result of a lot of help, which is in addition to what is usually provided, and your child or young person's physical, emotional and social development and health needs, and they may draw on relevant evidence from health professionals and what they may have done to meet your child's needs. Parents often ask our service when they should request an EHC needs assessment. The legal threshold asks just two questions. Do you believe your child or young person has or may have a special educational need? And do you believe they will need a lot of help, which goes beyond the resources available to the learning setting to provide SEN support? A parent or a young person over 16 and under 25 years, or the learning setting, can make a request at any time. Your child or young person does not need to have a diagnosed condition or a disability for an EHC needs assessment to be requested. It will depend solely on whether there is evidence that your child may have special educational needs, which may need support which goes beyond the resources available to the learning setting for SEN support. If a child or young person has health or social care needs, but no special educational needs, an EHC needs assessment will not be appropriate and will not be agreed, because these assessments are concerned with difficulties with learning. However, a child or young person with medical needs can have an individual healthcare plan, or IHP, which will set out how their medical needs can be supported in their learning setting. And in this slide we have included a picture of just one of the pages in an IHP template to give you an idea of the information they might include. EHC needs assessments do not bring more funding in themselves, but they may identify new, previously unrecognised needs. These new needs may provide the evidence for more SEN funding. In our county of Suffolk, funding is always driven by the needs of an individual child. So who can request an EHC needs assessment, and how can a request be made? The following people have a specific right in law to request an EHC needs assessment: the child's parent or someone with parental responsibility, and this includes making a request for a child aged 0 to 5 years if they believe that their child will need extra help at nursery or when they start school. Also, a young person over the age of 16 but under 25 years can make a request, or the educational setting. In addition, the SEND code says that anyone else can bring a child or young person who has or may have special educational needs to the attention of the local authority, particularly where they think an EHC needs assessment may be necessary. So, for example, a GP or a family support practitioner or a physiotherapist can contact the Special Educational Needs Assessment Team, or SENAT, and say why they think an EHC needs assessment would be helpful. In Luton, the SENAT team are responsible for EHC needs assessments, and we give their contact details a bit later in this recording. If your child is past the end of the academic year in which they turn 16, then the right to request an EHC needs assessment switches to them. The SEND code says that local authorities and practitioners should normally communicate directly with the young person at this point. But the SEND code is also clear that the young person's family and parents should continue to be involved in discussions. The young person may also ask for the help of their parents throughout the process. Sometimes parents contact our service and share situations like this, where their child has missed a lot of schooling, perhaps due to health needs, and will need a lot of support to go back to learning, but they are past compulsory school age. A young person up to the age of 25 years can request an EHC needs assessment if they want to continue or re-enter education or training, and they may have special educational needs which they believe need a lot of extra help. This learning does not have to be in a formal learning environment like a further education college. The young person might want to do a traineeship or an apprenticeship, or perhaps a supported internship. Parents are often unsure if they should speak to the learning setting before making a request. It is helpful to speak to the nursery, school or college about your worries before contacting the local authority. You can speak to the relevant class or subject teacher, or the nursery or school SENCO, which means Special Educational Needs Coordinator, or the person at the college responsible for SEN support. You or a young person between the ages of 16 and 25 years can make a request for an EHC needs assessment by writing to or emailing the Special Educational Needs Assessment Team, or SENAT, in Luton, using the contact details shown on the screen. You may like to pause the recording to take a photo or screenshot. You may wish to seek advice from our Luton SENDIAS service, and we can provide a model letter for you to adapt. Once a request for an EHC needs assessment has been made, what happens next? What can you expect? This chart shows the 20-week time frame for the whole EHC needs assessment process as set out by the Children and Families Act of 2014. And we will be looking at each section of this chart in this webinar. This slide shows the time frame for this first stage in the process. So week 1 starts when the local authority receives the request for an EHC Needs Assessment. There then follows a 6-week period when the LA ensures that they have the views of you, your child or young person, and the educational setting views to help them decide whether a needs assessment is appropriate. So what does this involve for families? When a request is lodged, the Senat team will identify a key worker who will contact you by telephone to talk through the process and to begin to understand your views about your child's needs and the outcomes you would like for them. The key worker is likely to be a SEN assessment officer from the Senat team. You will also be asked to give your views in writing. The Senat team will send you a detailed document called Guidelines for Parents' Contribution to their Child's EHC Needs Assessment, and this will offer you a guide on the sort of information which you might want to include. You can request the help of an independent parental supporter, and he or she should be able to help you with this. However, you do not have to use this framework if you don't want to. You can contribute your views in any format that you prefer. Providing your views is an opportunity to describe your child in as much detail as you would like the local authority to know about them. So do include copies of any information which you feel is relevant for your child, like school reports, behaviour support plans, or copies of exclusion letters. Also, you could send copies of any additional reports or documents you believe might support your case. For example, any letters of diagnosis, professional reports or recommendations, or a statement from a person who has helped your child to learn a skill. Remember, an EHC Needs Assessment is about clarifying the difficulties your child has with learning, and there may be other people outside of school who have been helping your child to learn a skill, like a Scouts leader. They may be happy to email you a paragraph explaining what difficulties they have noticed and what kind of adjustments they've had to make to help your child to learn and to follow instructions. Or maybe a sports coach has agreed for your child to wear different protective clothing because of their sensory needs. They may be happy to send you a paragraph to include in your information. It's really important to include your child or young person's views, as this process is all about them. We would encourage you to go through some of the questions on the form with your child and think about these points. What have they been enjoying, and what are their dreams and aspirations for the future? What kind of support has helped them most? And don't just think about school support here. Most parents have been making adjustments for their child in the home environment for years. So what has your child found most helpful? For example, maybe before a trip out or to go to a party, they really like you to explain what will happen and help them prepare. Think about what they're struggling with and also what might make it better. Sometimes it can help to ask your child or young person if they woke up tomorrow and it was the best day, what would be different? Remember, your child can contact our Sendias service for support and advice in sharing their views too. Person-centered resources, like the one-page profile templates that you can see on this screen, can often help a child or young person to focus on a few key areas and to share their thoughts and feelings. The Chef Kids website and Helen Sanderson Associates website have a variety of free one-page profile templates to download. The Preparing for Adulthood organisation has lots of useful resources to help young people think about and share their views. This leaflet, Planning My Future Life, has a number of templates which you or practitioners working with your child or young person may find helpful. This PowerPoint and notes for how it can be used for meetings can be found in our resources on our Sendias website in Luton. Each box is an individual slide, and some children and young people have used it to email in or even present their views to schools or the local authority. Some children have just chosen to send in one or two of the slides, and often they take and upload their own photos of what helps them or what they like doing, or photos of their animals or important people. In this example, you can see photos and resources which have helped the child to calm down or regulate themselves on a sensory level. Photos could simply be uploaded to an email and sent forwards instead. The organisation Mind of My Own has developed an app which a young person can download for free regardless of whether an organisation is registered with them. This app was co-produced by young people for young people to help them share their views, particularly if they struggle to talk to someone about their thoughts and feelings. And we know that many young people use apps all the time on their phones, so they might find this easier than sharing their thoughts verbally with someone. When the local authority considers all the information they receive, they need to make a decision, either to agree to do an EHC Needs Assessment or to refuse. So let's just pause for a moment and think about why a local authority might refuse to do an EHC Needs Assessment. A local authority might refuse if they have not been given enough information to judge whether or not your child has or may have SEN and what their progress has been like. The practitioners receiving your request most likely do not know your child and are entirely reliant on the information they receive. Remember the send code recommendation that a local authority consider whether there is evidence that the child or young person is not making expected progress, despite the learning setting taking relevant and purposeful action to identify, assess and meet their SEN. While the local authority might refuse if they feel that a nursery, school or college could do more to assess and meet your child's SEN. They might refuse if a support strategy or the involvement of one of the specialist education services is just beginning and they feel it is reasonable to allow time to assess the impact of this intervention. Or they might refuse if they feel that your child or young person's needs can be reasonably met within the resources available to the setting for SEN support. The send code says that the local authority must give its reasons for this decision where it decides not to proceed with an EHC needs assessment. The local authority should also provide feedback collected during the process of considering whether an EHC needs assessment is necessary, including evidence from professionals. So what if you receive a letter from the local authority saying that they are not going to do an EHC needs assessment? What options do you have? Firstly, you or the young person can send in more information and ask the LA to reconsider their decision at their next moderation panel meeting. In Luton, these panels meet every fortnight. If the LA refused because they wanted to give an intervention more time, you could choose to wait and make a fresh request in the future if needed. You or your young person could meet with the LA informally at a meeting with a member of the Senat team or through formal mediation to give more context. During these times, it may be possible for the Senat team or the mediation service to use phone or video conferences to meet with you. Or you or a young person over 16 could register a formal appeal to the SEN Tribunal. Remember, at any stage in the EHC process, you can seek advice from our Luton EHC service, including if you're confused about your options and next steps. We will never tell you what to do. We explore your options with you and aim to give you the information and confidence so that you or your young person can make an informed decision yourselves. Remember, there is more information on our Luton EHC website about appeals which may help you. We can direct you to a short video to help you understand what formal mediation involves, and also further videos showing you how to fill in the tribunal form for a refusal to assess decision. If you require further advice or support, please contact our Luton EHC service directly, and one of our advisors will be able to help you via phone or email to put together your case, and if current availability allows, we may be able to support you at a hearing. Practitioners who may be working with your child may be able to help you. Although a school or practitioner does not have the legal right to challenge a local authority refusal to do an EHC needs assessment, they might be involved in supporting you or your child to gather more information to be sent to the LA. A practitioner may be able to attend a meeting with the LA or formal mediation to add more information or context, and these meetings could be held virtually. Or a practitioner may agree to be a witness or provide a witness statement as part of a SEND tribunal appeal. So far we've talked about what happens if the LA refuse to do an EHC needs assessment, and now we're going to look at what happens when they agree. This shows the 10-week time period for the next stage in the whole 20-week process. So this is from week 7 to week 17, where information and evidence is gathered. So who does the local authority gather this information from? There are 2 slides for this. The law says that the local authority must seek advice and information from the child's parent or whoever has parental responsibility, or from the young person or adult, also from the educational setting, or if this is not available, the SEND code says they must seek advice from a person with experience of teaching children and young people with special educational needs, or from a person responsible for educational provision for the child or young person. They must also seek advice and information from an educational psychologist, and the SEND code says that this psychologist should consult any other psychologists known to be involved with the child or young person. For example, some families may have paid for a private assessment in the past. If a child or young person is vision or hearing impaired, the LA will consult with a person who is qualified to teach pupils or students with these impairments. And if a young person is detained, then advice will be sought from the youth offending team. The LA must also seek advice and information from healthcare professionals with a role in relation to your child or young person's health, and also from social care. If appropriate, this might include seeking information from children in need or child protection assessments, or information from a looked after child's care plan, or perhaps adult social care assessments. They must also seek advice and information from any person requested by the child's parent or young person, where the LA considers it reasonable. For example, a parent could suggest that the LA seek information from a GP or another health professional. So this is your chance to tell the SEND operations team if you feel there is a person who would be able to give useful information about your child's learning issues or any health or social care needs which you think are impacting on your child's ability to learn or to access learning. The local authority must also seek any other advice and information considered appropriate for a satisfactory assessment. For example, early help assessments or information from the virtual school head for looked after children. Or, for children of members of the armed forces, this might include seeking information from the Children's Education Advisory Service. Note that the legal duty is to seek advice and information, not to necessarily do an assessment. I know this is confusing, given the fact that it's called an EHC Needs Assessment. It's probably helpful to think of this as an information gathering process in order to assess your child's needs. Also, it's important to note that the SEND code says the LA must not seek further advice if such advice has already been provided and the person providing the advice and the LA and the child's parents or the young person are all satisfied that it is sufficient for the assessment process and remains current. So, for example, if an educational psychologist has done a full assessment in the last 6 months, then they may only need to do an observation or a focused assessment around a particular area of concern as part of this information gathering process. At the end of the day, the SEND code says that everyone needs to be satisfied that the information and advice is sufficient, it is enough. So if you are not happy, then tell the local authority why you feel they need to gather more information or advice. When it comes to health and social care, if your child is not yet known to these services, then they may contact you and possibly the educational setting to seek advice and information. They will want to find out if you or staff feel there are health or social care needs which are affecting your child's learning or your child or young person's ability to access learning. You can tell the LA in your family views form if you feel your child has health or social care needs. Health and social care should then consider whether an assessment is needed. However, if you feel that your child needs a health or social care assessment, we would recommend that you request this independently to the EHC Needs Assessment process. And there is more information about health and social care on the Luton Local Offer website. Remember that weeks 1 to 6 were for deciding whether to do an EHC Needs Assessment. And then if an EHC Needs Assessment is agreed, there is a 10-week period from week 7 to week 17 when advice and information is gathered. Well, before week 17, the local authority has a good idea of whether your child will need an EHC plan. And this slide shows you the latest time under normal circumstances when the LA can issue a draft EHC plan. The LA will write to you to tell you their decision, and if they don't issue an EHC plan, then you or your young person has a right to appeal. So just to be clear, not all EHC needs assessments will lead to an EHC plan. If the assessment identifies special educational needs which the local authority feel can be reasonably met by the nursery, school or college, then they won't issue an EHC plan. You or the young person will have the right to challenge if you don't agree with the local authority's decision. So how are you and your child involved in this process? The SEND Code of Practice says local authorities must consult the child and the child's parent or the young person or adult throughout the process of assessment and production of an EHC plan. Furthermore, the SEND Code recommends a person-centred approach, ensuring that children, young people and their parents are involved in all aspects of planning and decision-making. The SEND Code says it should be clear how the child, young person or adult has contributed to the plan and how their views are reflected in it. As a young person with SEND has said, "My plan is not about me without me." We know, however, that many young people find it hard to participate and to share their views. And the SEND Code recognises this and says that local authorities need to make sure that young people have access to support. Your child or young person may like to speak to our Sendias service for advice, perhaps in thinking about and sharing what kind of support helps them most, or helping them prepare notes, or supporting them at a meeting with the Senat team. Or a young person might like the help of an advocate from the Advocacy Service for Luton. When it comes to bringing the EHC plan together, you and your child can request a meeting with the Senat team who are responsible for writing the EHC plan. You can invite the school and other practitioners to join you to look at an initial draft plan, share your views, ask questions to make sure you understand, and explore and agree possible amendments. Usually this would be a face-to-face meeting, often in the learning setting, but the Senat team may also be able to offer a video or telephone conference. This slide gives you an idea of the kind of questions that parents or young people may have. Remember, no question is a silly question. An EHC plan is a tool for you and your child to use and refer to regularly. So the SEND Code says that what is written in the EHC plan must be in clear, straightforward language that you and your child can understand. So this is an ideal opportunity to speak out if something is unclear or where there might be jargon. The The SEND code is also clear that an EHC plan needs to be very specific. For example, the recommended support should state exactly what the support is, who will be offering it, when your child will have that help, and for how long. So if the plan describes support which is happening daily, what does daily mean? Does it mean throughout each day, or once a day for 15 minutes? If it's once a day for 15 minutes, then the plan needs to say so. Watch out for weaselly words in the plan, like access to, or opportunities for, or as required, which are not clear and specific enough. The SEND code says that the assessment and planning process should be easy for children, young people and their parents or carers to understand, and should use clear, ordinary language and images. Also, decisions about the content of EHC plans should be made openly and collaboratively with parents, children, or the young person or adult. The SEND code also says that local authorities should support and encourage the involvement of children, young people and parents or carers by giving them time to prepare for discussions and meetings, and giving time in those discussions and meetings to hear the views of children, young people and their parents. So just to be clear, an EHC plan can only be issued after a child, young person or adult has gone through the process of an EHC Needs Assessment. At the end of that process, the local authority has to decide either to issue an EHC plan or not. It will issue an EHC plan if the child, young person or adult has a special educational need or disability that cannot be met by the support and advice which is usually available to their school or college. If the LA decides that your child's needs can be met within the resources and advice available to the learning setting through SEND support, it will not issue an EHC plan. Instead, they can suggest a resource agreement, and although this is not enforceable under the law, it can still be useful for clarifying your child's needs and the recommended support to address those needs. If an EHC plan is agreed, it's important to spend a few minutes thinking about how this is finalised. Early in the recording, we explained that the whole EHC Needs Assessment process should take 20 weeks. And this slide shows you the last few weeks of the 20-week Needs Assessment process. If the LA decides that your child needs an EHC plan, then you will receive the draft plan by week 17. You may already have been working on the draft in a working together meeting. When you receive the draft plan, you have 15 days to go through it and decide if you are happy with it. And you can contact our service if you'd like help with this. In the draft plan, section I is left blank. This section is for the name or type of educational setting. It must be left blank so that a parent or someone with parental responsibility or the young person can say what setting they would like. Then in weeks 19 and 20, the LA must consult with the educational setting that you or your young person has named. That setting has 15 days to go through the information about your child and decide whether their setting is suitable for your child's needs, abilities and age, and whether giving your child a place would be compatible, that means it would work, with the teaching of the children already on their roll, and compatible with the use of resources for all their pupils. Parents and young people can suggest changes to the draft EHC plan in weeks 17 to 18. However, sometimes changes are not all agreed. The local authority can still issue the final EHC plan to keep within the legal time frame of 20 weeks. Only the parent, carer or person with parental responsibility or a young person has the right to appeal to the SEND tribunal. An appeal needs to be made within 2 months of the local authority letter which gives their decision. For most appeals, you must consider mediation. Remember, there is further information about appeals on our Sendias website in Luton, and we can offer advice in helping you build your case, and depending on the availability of advisors, we may also be able to support you at a tribunal hearing. This recording was made by Luton Sendias, but every county will have an impartial and confidential Send Information, Advice and Support Service.